Almost 30 years after the freest and most credible election as adjudged by many, the ripple effect of the 1993 Budge poll still resonates across the streets of Nigeria. On that symbolic day, young people and groups came out to protest, demanding for better governance, security, among other issues, on Nigeria's 2021 Democracy Day. For them, the current situation of the country is not a reflection of their collective aspirations. That will be our focus on Special Report. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jeffrey Uzongo.
On behalf of the federal government, I tender the nation's apology to the family of late MKO Abiola, who got the highest vote, and to those that lost their loved ones in the cause of June 12 struggle.
June 12, a day set aside to celebrate Democracy Day in Nigeria in honor of the winner of the June 12, 1993 presidential election, Chief MKO Abiola, and those who fought for the sustenance of democracy. It's a symbolic day that marks both the end of military dictatorship and a return to democratic leadership, as declared by President Muhammadu Buhari's administration when in June 2018 he honored the sacrifices of Chief Abiola and his comrades, whose mandate was denied after a botched election that could have seen him emerge victor.
Our decision to recognize and honor June 12 and its actors is in the national interest. It is aimed at settling national healing process and the reconciliation of the 25-year pestering wound caused by the annulment of the June 12 elections. I earnestly invite all Nigerians across all our national divide to accept it in good faith. Our action today is to bury the negative side of June 12. The side of ill feelings, hate, frustrating, and agony. What we are doing is celebrating and appreciating the positive side of June 12, the June 12 which restored democracy and freedom. The June 12 that overcome our various divides, and the June 12 that produce unity and national cohesion. This is the June 12 we are celebrating today, and we will nurture it to our next generations.
Political class and members of the press corps.
This year's celebration begins with a nationwide broadcast by President Muhammadu Buhari, who commends the can-do spirit of Nigerians. He also salutes the bravery of the gallant armed forces who lay down their lives for the nation, while empathizing with families of victims of different forms of criminality, among other issues.
In the last 2 years, we have witnessed and overcome a good number of testy challenges that would have destroyed other nations, especially relating to our collective security. The indefatigable can-do spirit of the Nigerian has sustained us and would keep pushing us to put these challenges behind us. Unfortunately, some of these challenges came in the shape of violent outrages, leading to loss of lives of many of our dear compatriots and the destruction of some of our infrastructure, including those devoted to improving our democratic processes. Once again, I want to render my sincere and heartfelt condolences to the families and friends of our gallant servicemen and women who lost their lives in the line of duty and as sacrifice to keep Nigeria safe. I extend the same condolence to the families and friends of our countrymen, women and children who are unfortunate victims of such senseless arsons, kidnappings, and murders. I also share the pains of families and direct victims of ransom-seeking, kidnapped victims who went through unimaginable trauma in the course of their forced imprisonment. Let me assure my fellow citizens that every incident, however minor, gives me great worry and concern, and I immediately order security agencies to swiftly but safely rescue victims and bring perpetrators to justice.
Rather than celebrate, young people and groups took to the street in protest to express their grievances and dissatisfaction with the system, perhaps also heightened by the recent impasse between the federal government and the microblogging platform Twitter, which led to the suspension of Twitter, Nigeria's young people's rendezvous for driving conversations and commerce. The protesters were determined to brace the odds to uphold their right to peacefully converge.
God is not happy with them. God is not happy with our leadership.
Things got off peacefully at the Ojota venue of the protest in Lagos until a drama ensued after a failed dialogue with law enforcement. The gathering was then disrupted by the police, who shot tear gas to disperse the protesters, who bore placards with different inscriptions insisting on their voices being heard.
When we are protesting, we are just letting you know our concerns. A leader that has the interest of the people at heart will listen. The government is quick to react. They are not quick to respond. When citizens have issues, listen, take that in. But you know, the government, I don't know, all of them, I don't know the way they think.
Could it be the tag Buhari must go for the protest?
Could it be the tag Buhari? In all honesty, you see, let me tell you, I put something on my Twitter. I put it on my Twitter. I said, yes, people will agitate and say Buhari must go. But I think we should read beyond Buhari must go. This is not, of course, Buhari, we all know Buhari is a democratically elected president. Do you understand that? This is not, we are not saying we are taking guns to Aso Rock to chase him out. But Buhari must go is a testament, is a testament of how the government has failed. You understand? So it's more, if you look at what people are protesting for, insecurity, poverty, lack of proper care, kidnapping, banditry, we can go on and on and on. So the people are protesting against a failed government. They are saying enough is enough. Who is the head of that government? It is the president. If the president cannot assure us, if we have even moved past the stage of assurances, if the president cannot swing into action and ensure that the lives of citizens are safeguarded, then he should resign.
You can see us. We don't bear arms. We don't tolerate. I've said it and I will reiterate it. Ours is a peaceful struggle. We believe our mass and numbers are enough to make our point. And this is what democracy is about, that we have a fundamental right to peacefully protest. And that the least we can do in this situation is to actually peacefully protest. But unfortunately, the police today have taken it upon themselves to stop our peaceful march, to disperse our people. The danger of that, I'm no longer a young man. I was part of the June 12th, and that's how many decades ago now. But these younger ones, if you continue to repress them, and they cannot even peacefully march, some of us that are keeping lead on them, some of us that are saying, no, we should not, it's not about violence, we may not have that voice again. They should allow people to come out. They should allow people to peacefully express themselves. It is the least Nigerians can do in this circumstance. To repress free speech by banning Twitter, by clamping down social media, by stopping peaceful protest, is going to lead to extremism. People will react to the crisis that is happening. The cost of food has escalated. During COVID-19 all over the world, government was paying rent for people. Government was subsidizing electricity tariff and fuel prices. In Nigeria, that was the time they started to increase fuel price high. In Nigeria, that was when they increased electricity tariff by over 300%. That was when they started increasing the price of VAT. And today, only those who are politicians or who are working with them, we claim that they have enough. They have enough to meet their most basic requirement of food and nutrition in this country. Only those ones. Few Nigerians can feed even once or twice a day properly. And when you have this kind of situation, we are saying that the least you can do is to allow ideas to flower. The least you can do is to allow people to ventilate their anger. Exactly. The least you can do is to allow people to ventilate their discontent. Exactly. To violently repress people under this condition is to ask for what they will not be able to contain.
That is also an infringement on their fundamental right.
Although some of the protesters were arrested, they were later released. Senior Advocate of Nigeria Femi Falana and Minister of State for Labour Festus Keyamo also shared their views on the protest under the law.
Nigerians have the right to protest peacefully. In fact, we have even gone beyond recognizing that right. A duty has now been imposed on the police. The Police Establishment Bill, signed into law last year, September, by the President, provides Section 83, subsection 4, that during protests, the police shall provide security for the demonstrators or for the protesters. And so instead of harassing them, instead of tear gassing them, instead of attacking them, once the police in Lagos, the Lagos State Police Command is aware that some people are going to protest, today, what should be done is for the police to guide them and ensure that the peaceful protest is not broken to or is not hijacked by criminal elements, but to unleash tear gas, fire tear gas canisters on peaceful protesters. It is no longer permissible under the law. And I think this will be made clear to the police that this will be the last time that the right of Nigerians to protest peacefully will be so violated.
Now listen, I agree that you don't need a police permit to protest. That is a basic law as already stated by the Court of Appeal. You don't need a police permit. However, police permit is different from information to the police. Now for the police to perform their duty as provided for by law, and that is the duty to provide security for the protesters, does it not also make common sense for you to then say, look, inform the police, not to take permission from them. Take note. Inform the police. We will start a protest from Ojota. Our route will take us through Maryland and up to Ikeja bus stop. Just inform them route. Inform them of what wants to happen so that along that route, they can provide travel advisory. They can then perform their duty. Don't forget that Mr. Falana says they have a duty. How will they perform a duty if they don't have information as to what you want to do? So they must have information. And once they have that information, they cannot disperse you. They cannot tear gas you, so long as it is peaceful. But then give them information. And if you don't give them information, and they see you on the street, and they have no knowledge at all, then perhaps they will know your intent, your purpose, and that is perhaps why they will react.
Protesters also turned out in their numbers in the nation's capital, Abuja, and converged on the Gudu area carrying placards and banners with various inscriptions. They asked the president to deal with the various challenges in the country, especially insecurity and corruption.
People are killing Kaduna.
Yes.
Look at how innocent people are being killed in the southeast.
Yes.
We say this is unacceptable in a democracy.
Yes.
And as such, we must collectively unite against the tyrants who are currently in power. For us, we believe that the irreducible minimum in a democracy is the ability of the citizens to express their grievances, to speak on issues, and to canvass arguments.
However, some minutes into the protest, things got rowdy when the police arrived and fired tear gas canisters at the protesters. Meanwhile, pro-Buhari protesters also gathered outside the Unity Fountain, insisting that the federal government is doing its best to protect the country's democracy.
Freedom of speech, yes, but it shouldn't be abused. Freedom of speech should not be abused. I am not saying that everybody should not be allowed to air out his view, but the truth is it shouldn't be abused, and you shouldn't be found at any time inciting the general populace or issuing out fake news. In most cases, we are seeing situations where people are found of giving out fake news or are being more politically motivated. This country is suffering from politicians. They mislead the youth, they give you a wrong direction, and all we do, we keep following them. Now, Nigeria must change our attitude, and everything we are doing must be scrutinized. Yes, freedom of speech, but it must be scrutinized, and people should be ready to bear the consequences of fake news.
An anti-Buhari protester walked into the pro-Buhari group and was mobbed, but the police came to his rescue. In an exclusive interview with Channels Television, the force PRO, Mr. Frank Mba, says what the police did is in line with international best practices of dispersing violent protests.
We had an isolated case in Abuja where some of the protesters became unruly, and in line with international best practice, the police fired tear gas at them. And that is an acceptable mode of engaging violent protesters anywhere in the world, whether it's in Abuja, whether it's in Lagos, whether it's in Paris, whether it's in London or New York or California or Moscow. That is internationally accepted. We would have problems if we have fired live bullets at them, but when you fire tear gas at protesters to disperse them, you are not in breach of any known code, either nationally or internationally. I also want to use this opportunity to state clearly that no citizen, either in Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, Kano, or anywhere, is currently in detention as a result of this isolated incident.
In Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, some protesters were seen at the Mokola venue of the protest with placards chanting songs as they demand for better governance.
Over 30% of Nigerian youth wake up on daily basis without any means of livelihood, meaning that they are jobless. And what that means is that every 3 Nigerian youths you see today, one of them ultimately is unemployed. And these are the problems that Nigerians are still facing years after the June 12th. And that is exactly why Nigerians has decided to come out today to express their anger, their dissatisfaction.
It's a similar call for peaceful protesters in Osogbo, the Osun State capital. For them, the government must act fast to reduce poverty and what they term oppression.
People today are so tired that they are turning against themselves. Violence has become the order of the day in this country. Insecurity pervades our lands. And this is the reason why we are telling Mr. President, if you are so tired and you are incapacitated, cannot continue to run this country, please resign honorably. I will give you a befitting outing. But we cannot continue to run a country that we cannot be proud of.
In Edo State, some residents and members of civil society groups embarked on peaceful protests around the major streets in Benin City, the state capital, taking their demands for a better Nigeria, including security within the state and on the highways to the government house as well.
We concede very seriously that security is one of the items on the exclusive list. And as such, it is within the precinct of the federal government to provide security. I commend the state for the vigilante that have been put in perspective. But we want to advocate that the insecurity on the highways, where from people are dying on a daily basis. Our farmers can no longer go to the farm. Our people can no longer travel. And we need to evaporate from Benin to go to my village I cannot for fear of insecurity.
In Adamawa State, the protesters defied the heavy downpour as they chant their demands through the streets of Yola, the state capital. The protesters were not deterred by the show of force by security operatives as a call for good governance. Although low-key, the June 12 protest held peacefully in Rivers State despite the deployment of armed security operatives. A handful of members of civil society groups turned up for the demonstration at the Port Harcourt Pleasure Park in the state capital.
He promised Nigerians he's going to make sure the killing in the different parts of this country will stop. Surprisingly, from the north to the west, to the south, even down here in Rivers State, where we reside, selling of body parts is becoming a new trade. In fact, as I speak to you, some communities in Andoni is sacked on near daily basis in Ogoni.
Governor Samuel Otom used a state broadcaster to assert his view on the planned recovery of grazing routes by the federal government.
I want you to know that we have the law in place, and the law do not breach any provision of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So it is one thing to say reopening of cattle routes or grazing areas. I want to believe that it is not meant for Benue State because our law was tested by Federal High Court and it has been proven that it's a legitimate law meant to provide win-win situation for farmers and herders who want to do legitimate business. Herders who want to do legitimate business here.
There is no doubt that Nigeria's democracy is a work in progress as various interests seize days like this to put forward their pressing concerns. However, it is expected that all hands must be on deck on the journey to realizing the Nigeria of our dream.
Our national anthem. This, are you ready? Are you ready, usually? When leader arrive, national anthem will sing.
It's probably safe to aspire that someday in the near future, all this struggle will be worth it, and we can safely return to the Nigeria of June 12, 1993, when the country united beyond the fault lines of religion, partisan politics, and ethnicity. Arguably, the gold standard of our experiment for nationhood. Well, that's our program for this week. Thank you for your time and, of course, your usual company. I'm Jeffrey Uzongo.